everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Crossroads. I am your host, Rashida Green, and this show is for and about environmental justice and those who fight the fight with skin as melanated as the days are long. Knowledge is power, and we are breaking down stereotypes one episode at a time. So, everyone, thank you for joining me again today. This is a case study / call to action episode. So I want to start off first by giving some flowers. So the first person that I want to give some flowers to is Dr. Beverly Wright. Dr. Wright is a champion and an advocate for environmental justice. She wrote a lot of very detailed, very excellent work about Hurricane Katrina. She herself is a Hurricane Katrina survivor. So I want to offer up flowers to her. She is definitely one of the pioneers of the environmental justice movement. And next, I want to offer up an organization this time. So Black Millennials for Flint. So I think I may have mentioned that I'd gone to an event in DC centered around environmental justice, put on by several groups, but one of which was We Can, and another was Black Millennials for Flint. It was a panel discussion, and we talked about a myriad of things, but one of the main takeaways was the importance of NEPA. So this episode, I'm really giving you kind of like a high-level overview of the NEPA Act, some of my readings and findings from the redlining that has gone on within the NEPA Act itself, and really just calling to action. Like where I talk about this a lot, about being politically active and really getting into the local level, because obviously with things that are going on the federal level, we're low-key screwed, but there is hope and work to be done on the local level. But today I'm asking really for us to shift our focus to the federal level. So let's just go ahead and get right on into this. So NEPA is the National Environmental Protection Act, and it was signed by Richard Nixon in 1970. So to give you all a perspective, like of what is going on in the 70s, like around this time, is that we were into the 70s was the energy crisis. So this is like when there was a gas shortage, so people had had designated times in which they could get gas. The prices were astronomical. And in addition to that, there were several documented environmental issues. For example, the Love Canal situation, and I encourage everyone to look that up. This was also the time of the landfill issue in Warren County, North Carolina, and also the lead smelter crisis in West Dallas, Texas. Like all of these things were happening within that span of between 1970 and 1980. So during the course of this time, so we're back to NEPA. That was signed in 1970, and it requires all federal agencies to make an assessment of environmental impact on any proposed action. And just some examples of what these actions could be. These are land management, permit applications, or highway construction, right? And this policy in Title II actually establishes the Council for Environmental Quality, or CEQ. So the CEQ was basically an oversight committee, and their job is to oversee the implementation of NEPA, right? So they're basically set up to ensure that federal agencies comply with NEPA, and they oversee the environmental impact assessment process. So there's specific language within NEPA that outlines how federal agencies have to make assessments for environmental impact. So, and we kind of talked about this, but the purpose of NEPA was to protect both the environment and human life and make sure that we are living harmoniously. And it was designed to prevent and eliminate harm, personal harm, and environmental harm as well. So agencies had to prepare an impact statement known as an environmental impact assessment or just an environmental assessment, to outline whatever proposed action they want to take and how that could potentially impact the environment. And there's a lot to unpack with that, because I'm sure the questions are, okay, well, then what is all this talk about highway expansion? And okay, I know, I feel it. But getting back to this, so in 1978, the Council of Environmental Quality issued regulations to implement NEPA. So between 1970 and 1978, okay? And I also, once again, I want to highlight that there were several environmental issues going on at that time. And this is also around the time where we started to see the first wave of legislation around environmental protection. This is when the Air Quality Act came out as well. This is when the EPA was established. Like, a lot of these things were happening as a direct response to the increase in environmental activism. So there's a lot of, previously, prior to 1970, there was a lot more concern about preservation. But with this second wave of the environmentalism, it was more about not just preserving green space, but also concern about what is going on with our air quality, our water quality, etc. So let's talk about what's changing. So, like I said, I read the edits. And in addition to reading it, because it's, basically track changes, you can see, even though it's struck through, you can see what the original language looked like. And then you can see the changes that are being proposed. So a lot of the changes include language changes. And the first one that stuck out to me was that the language about what NEPA is supposed to do, like the strength that NEPA is supposed to have. So they changed the word mandate. Mandate is struck out, and it's more of policy. And the language as you're reading it gives more of, this is just sort of like guidelines, like how you should do this thing. It's as opposed to, this is the way that you have to do it, no questions asked. So it removes language that ensures that the public is notified of environmental concerns regarding any new federal project. Yeah. Okay. Next, some of the other language too is environmental assessment will be considered. So when I mentioned that it was as part of NEPA, there had to be an environmental assessment that accompanies any proposal for new work or new projects or actions. Yeah, that's just a consideration. It doesn't mean that you have to do it. It doesn't have to have any kind of fitting information, specifically scientific information that outlines the impact of whatever the proposed project is at all. So what I'm saying is, the words scientific, there was also encyclopedia, which, I mean, you might argue, okay, well, who's really using encyclopedias that day or in this day and age? But the reality is, like, words that require research, girl, were removed, completely struck out, with this very soft, very loose, oh, well, it's guidance, and, it doesn't necessarily have to show and prove that there is any research that has been done to determine if a project could potentially cause harm to the public or the earth. In addition to that, in addition to all of this, the assessments don't have to show any evidence of an impact. And if there are questions associated with the proposal of this proposed action, if they don't meet the 30-day deadline to be submitted, they're ignored, completely ignored. And also, there is, again, like I said, like, these proposals or actions can take place without public knowledge. There's also language in the red lines to imply that there could be an assessment done to determine if NEPA guidelines are even necessary when considering a project, meaning that that a federal agency has the right to decide, I don't really think NEPA applies here, and can completely ignore any of the policy guidance at all. So that basically means that they can decide that if NEPA guidelines interferes with what they want to do, that they can just simply ignore it. So these are just, again, other examples of just how like these proposed changes are not for our best good. So I think that kind of gives you a good sense of why this is really crazy and why organizations like Black Millennials for Flint are not pleased, and none of us should be pleased. I mean, we already are aware of the fact that, Flint, Michigan has had for the last 6 years now, issues with their water that is to my knowledge has not been resolved, right? And I'm sure the argument is, well, okay, so you're saying that we should care about this act, and yet things like this are still occurring and still happening. And you're absolutely right. And I would take it a step further and say that, as we've seen, and as I've talked about in previous episodes, that the EPA has historically taken longer time to respond to issues involving the Black community than others. And yes, I completely agree. What I would still say, though, is that we have to be involved and aware and take action in regards to these things, because regardless to who is going to respond faster by race, a breakdown by race or a breakdown by class in response time, there will be none of any of that. There's not going to be anything that you can point to determine if a project that has been proposed is going to impact your community at all, because NEPA has been stripped to the point where none of that is really necessary for it to get through. So, I mean, I understand that argument and I'm here for it, but I would also say that we still, regardless, have a duty to do our due diligence and make certain that we are aware of federal changes to policy, because of the impact that we know and we can see have trickled down into the state and local level. So that's just a long roundabout way of saying I understand the multiple sides of this argument, but I would still encourage everyone or folks just to not solely look at it like this is somewhere where I can't be effective. We still have to be very vigilant with what's going on. So I think I kind of said why we should care, but why this makes a difference. But just sort of to reiterate that, we should be aware of these changes and want to make our voices heard, because corporations are going to do whatever they want. This is basically like The Purge or like Fight Club. Like, they're going to be able to do whatever they want, and there's not going to be any mandate to stop them. NEPA, unfortunately, is like the only environmental mandate. I mean, we do have air quality, yes, and we do have water quality too, but an overarching mandate, this is it. And yes, it's old and it should definitely be updated, but the changes that are being proposed are not updates. They're not updates that are more encompassing of the time in which we're living. This is more about how can we make this as loose and slack as possible so we can just put a SeaWorld and a gas station everywhere, girl. Like, that's what's happening. So I just wanted to raise that up, and of course, I didn't just come here to freak you out. I also came with some solutions of things that we can do. So the real impetus and the urgency in this episode is really because we as citizens have an opportunity to submit our questions and to submit our statements to the CEQ. We have until March the 10th. So right now it is March 8th. So you have Monday and Tuesday to get on in gear. Now, the beauty part about this is that Black Millennials for Flint have done the groundwork for you. So they have templates that you can use for social media. They have the contact information for the CEQ so that you can email them, you can call, fax. I know, fax, but you can do whatever you need to do to get in touch with them and to make your voice heard. So I implore you to make time to do that. They've got formatting for Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, everything. All you have to do is Google your rep, your U.S. rep, and your senator. Find their names. That's pretty easy. All you have to do is Google your address, and ask, like, who's my senator? Comes right up. Trust me. So, and at them and ask them, what are you guys doing? Are you all involved in this in any way, and in what way? They have a right to, they are supposed to, they're your representative. They're the ones that you've elected to represent you in Congress. So they're representing you and your interests. So they have a requirement to do just that. So I encourage you to find who your congressman is, do these things, and ask them, what are you all doing? Have you read this foolishness? Because this is basically just a free-for-all. We're just going to have Philip Morris and all his friends everywhere giving whales cigarettes. I mean, okay, so that's extreme, but I'm serious. Like, the what is being proposed in these changes are not for our benefit. I mean, the first one I just said about not having to inform the public should just be enough. Should be enough to light a fire under your buns. Okay. So please, March 10th, I will get on it. I will definitely have the resources for you in the description box, as I always do. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, and I will be posting all the things. And so in addition to that call to action, I'm also going to encourage everyone to do some research. Look up Love Canal. Look up Love Canal in Buffalo, New York. Look up the West Dallas lead issue. Dr. Robert Bullard, who I call out all the time because he is like the James Brown of environmental justice. He did a really great book. His book, Dumping in Dixie, highlights this. They highlight the lead issue in West Dallas. And also look up the Warren County, North Carolina landfill issue. This happened in around 1982. And what I would also encourage you to do while you're researching is kind of take notice of the difference between how the Love Canal situation was handled and the difference between that and West Dallas and Warren County. Just kind of noticing the differences in how those situations were handled. And the reason that I'm encouraging folks to do this is really because you have to understand that these issues of the environment affect us. It isn't just about saving the whales. We don't want the whales eating plastic bags and cigarette butts. We don't. And the whales are important to our environment, and we need them in the ocean, not in SeaWorld. Anyway, that's a whole other topic. So, but the importance and the reason that I'm driving this is really because we have to be aware that we have been involved in the environment. And a lot of times, unfortunately, like many other things in this country, it hasn't been positive. So asking very much so, very sincerely, to get involved. There's no better time than now. It's not going to cost you anything. It'll take you 5 minutes. Again, Black millennials have done it for you. All you have to do is copy and paste and Google your congressman and your senator. And that is that. Okay. So, slowing things down a little bit, I am going to give some shout outs, very quick shout outs to, in addition to the Black Millennials for Flint and We Can, definitely want to tell you all about Check the Weather. It's a very amazing young woman based in Baltimore, Howard University alum. Yes. She has an amazing platform. Please check her out. She is definitely an environmental justice advocate. And some of my own personal followers and things and group of amazing black podcasters that I've come to know. So I'm going to name as many as I possibly can and definitely check them out. So, of course, I've mentioned And She Creates, Purring Kitty Cat. I am the president of the Meow Hive. That's right. So definitely check out Purring Kitty Cat, Confessions of a Red Couch, Shall We Proceed, Diversity 101, D&H, Hair Care, who I've had on the show before, talking about veganism and also her hair care line. She's an amazing friend and ally as well. Who am I missing? Oh, Thoughts from a Blog Queen. Please check her out as well. It's Mo's show. Mo, check her out too. I think that's it. It's probably not it because there's so many of us. We are like real deep. But please check out my podcasting sisters. And if you are looking for more information just in general about me, about the podcast, you can always visit my website, allroadscross.com. And you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Instagram is Crossroads Podcast. Twitter and Facebook are Crossroads Pod C1. Yes, really weird. And I update it on a regular basis with just different things that are going on in the world and the community that we should all be aware of. And if you have anything that you want me to look into or investigate, you can always DM me. I will respond to you. And I'm always looking for, as unfortunate as it may sound, I'm always looking for different topics to research and get into, because this is a mass thing that we're experiencing, where this is not a time or a place in which we are just living in our own little worlds and not connected. Social media actually does a very great job of connecting us. So if you would like to reach out to me, please do. If I'm still going to continue to talk about waste, I have not forgotten about that. Getting you guys up to date on my blog about waste. If you have any updates on your journey about managing your waste, you can always use the hashtag WasteNot2020, and I will follow that as well, and will provide more updates and blog posts and things like that in the future. So guys, I'm keeping this episode pretty short, which I can't believe, but I definitely want to make sure that, again, you have until March 10th. Please reach out to the CEQ. Please read the edits and the proposed changes to NEPA. It is very, very important. We do have a Environmental Justice Act that was just recently put forth, I believe in February, and I can post the link to that as well. But NEPA is it's the main one we have, and we have to protect it because it's basically the only thing that's protecting us, except for just the work that we as on the grassroots and on the ground are doing. So again, please take care of that. Please email or call your senator and your representative. And that's all for me, everybody. I will see you all at the crossroads.